Alright, so in this one we're going to set up the enemies to come down and we will shoot them and stuff. Yay! Okay. So for the enemies, what I've got to do is I want to put that on a loop as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to code snippets, and we want to do the enter frame event. So just double click on that. It's going to go ahead and do an enter frame event. So enter frame, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to call this one enemy spawn. Enemy spawn. And enemy spawn. Okay. Just so that I know what it is. It's not actually super necessary, but it's always good to, include that. All right. So let's go ahead and get to it. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated than what we've done so far. So we need to basically set up that it's going to randomly spawn an enemy up here. Okay. So to do that, we're going to go to, we're going to say if, and I'm going to write this out and then I'll explain afterwards. Math.floor, parentheses, math.random, times, and then we're going to do, I'm going to put another variable up here. We're just going to call it variable spawn rate. That's fine, and we'll make it of the type number. And I'm going to initially set it to 25. Okay. So times spawn rate. Spawn rate. Oops, I capitalized that, sorry. Spawn rate. Like that. Is equal to 0. Like this. And okay, so let me explain this real quick. So it says if whatever's inside of this parentheses is true, it's going to run what's in this block here. It's in between these braces. All right. So I'm going to start from the beginning and work my way out. So math.random, the way this works is that it's just a pre-built function inside of, or it's a class technically, inside of animate, and it has this method in here called random. And what we'll do is it'll basically just generate a random number, but the way that you have it generate that number is you multiply it times because I think it's like 0 through 1 or something. You multiply it times what you want. So if I do spawn rate here, it's right now I set it to 25. What it's going to do is it's going to randomly come up with a number between 0 and 25, just randomly. Okay. Now, so that's what's going to happen. So sometimes this will be 1, sometimes it'll be 23, it might be 12, it might be 11. It's just going to randomly generate a number between 0 and 25. Then this math.floor, what that does is it makes it a whole number. It'll round the number, but it doesn't just I think that, I don't know if it's just called .round for math.round, or it might be another, I don't remember what they call it, but floor, what it does is it rounds to the lowest number. So let's say I have 5.1, it would round it down to 5. But let's say I have 5.7, it will still round it down to 5. And that's important because when I go 0 through 25, I have 1/25th of a chance for it to equal up to 0, because I need to be basically a whole number. Okay? So, as it currently stands, if I have 25 here, what that means is that roughly every 1 second, it's somewhat probable, right? Because what's going to happen is that every frame, because if you look, this is on enter frame, right? So on every frame, this is going to run, right? So it'll run, and it'll come up with a random number, then it'll run and come up with a random number, and then run and come up with a random number. And if it does that, let's say for 25 times, the probability, because that's what we set it to, is actually pretty, kind of possible. Okay, it could happen a whole bunch of times. It could happen less than that, but that's roughly what it ends up being. And 25, which is kind of like 24, is basically almost roughly a second. You can see we're running 24 frames per second. But if I took this number, the spawn rate, and made it like, let's say 3, that means every it's going to be a number between 0 and 3, which is much more likely to end up being 0, so you'll end up with more enemies. And that's the idea behind it. Okay, so it's going to randomly make an enemy based on this, so they'll randomly happen at times. Okay, so that way it's not just every second there's another one. Unless that's what you want, you can do that. But instead we're just going to we're going to do it so it's more randomized. All right. So now, inside of that, what we're going to have to do is kind of like what we did with the bullet. We're going to have to do more or less the same thing. So I'm going to do variable. We're going to call it enemy. All right. And it's going to be of the type movie clip. And I'm going to set it equal to, and I got to go over here, and here's my enemy. I want enemy attack, actually. So this is the one that's animated. You can actually look, see this graphic here? But look on the top right when I go to enemy attack. See how it has a play button? That means there's animation on it. Okay, so if you're getting confused about which one you had that's animated, that's what you need to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to type in enemy, and I just noticed it's a capital E. You can name it whatever you want, but just so that I know, like, my enemy here is lowercase, because that's what they need to be for variables. So it's going to be new enemy, like that. So it's going to create a new enemy chunk here, and then I just need to set the position. So the enemy, what I need to do is, okay, I need to take this enemy attack, and I got to put him up here. You can do the same thing, all right, so that he's off screen. And I'm just going to look and see what that ends up being. So if I look, my Y position, it says 773, which is kind of high. Really? That's what it ends up being? I guess so. Okay, so 773. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do enemy.y is equal to 770, we'll just say, just to keep nice round numbers. Okay, so that's what that will be. Now we will do the X. Now what I want to happen though is I don't want it to always just spawn right here, right? On the top, I always want it to be off screen on the top, but I want it to randomly between the beginning and the end of this, right? Somewhere in here. So what we're going to do is do a randomness of that. So we're going to do enemy.x is equal to math.random. You may recognize that one. And what we're going to do is we're going to multiply it, okay, based off of the stage.stage width, stage width, yeah, stage width. All right, stage width, and then we'll do minus 100, like that, and then plus 50. All right. The reason why what it'll do is that it'll make it more likely to stay inside by adding these numbers on here. Okay. All right. So that looks good. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is this. Okay. We're going to do this enemy dot mouse children. Wait a minute. No, I don't need to do that. I don't even know why I was putting that. Never mind. That one's, you can leave that alone. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the enemy here. So I'm just going to do add child, and the child we're going to add is the enemy that we just created. And then we're going to do we're going to add this. Oh, so that works fine. I don't need to put this in a container. You'll see kind of why when I actually do the hitting, why it's necessary for us not to do that, or that it's not required that we do that. But I do also, just like I have this bullet array, I want to have an array that keeps track of my enemies. So underneath that one, I'm just going to go ahead and do enemy underscore AAR. It's a array, and we're just going to make it an empty array to start with. Okay. So what I'm going to do, besides adding it there, I also want to go ahead and add it to an array so that I can use that later on. So push, we're going to push it, and we're going to do enemy like this, like that. All right. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that to make it a little bit cleaner. Okay. So theoretically, let's I'm going to say this real quick first and hit Control Enter to test that. And there you go. So you can see it's randomly generating my enemies. The bullets don't do anything, but we do have some enemies going on, and there's quite a few of them. So they're kind of big. I shouldn't have made them so big. Anyway, but you can see, so that's kind of working. Yay! All right. yeah, so we got that going on. I'm pretty happy with that. The next thing to do is to actually make it so we can hit them. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to test that basically every frame. So we're going to do, just like this one, the add event listener. So I'm going to go to code snippets, and we want to do an enter frame event. So double click on that, and it's going to make another enter frame. And we're going to call this one the enemy hit. All right, and down here, enemy hit. And this is basically what we're going to use in order to test if we hit an enemy with our bullets. Okay, so it's going to be semi-complicated. So what we have to do is we have to test each and every enemy individually, because I can't have it that if I hit an enemy, because I know if I say, oh, it hit an enemy, and I say delete the enemy, it'll delete all the enemies, right? I have to test for each specific enemy. That's why on here I made a list on this array of all my enemies. So what I got to do is I got to test each and every enemy every frame to see if that hits something, okay, for each one of them individually. And that's why we're using array in this specific case, okay? So I'm going to use a for loop to do that. So we're going to say for, and I'll explain this a little bit better afterwards. For var, let's say e, it's going to be of type int. We're going to set it equal to 0, and then we're going to say e is equal to, or e, well, while e is less than the enemy dot, well, enemy underscore r dot length, okay, and e plus plus, like that, and oops, like that. Okay, so what this is going to do is we're going to say for as long as what's in these parentheses is true, you're going to run this loop. And so what we did is we set up an initial variable called e. E is like enemy. Usually I do I, but I'm actually going to have to put another for loop inside of this one, and you can't have two of those. So just to help distinguish between them. So the e one's going to represent enemy. So we're going to say e, we're going to set up to 0 to start with. So you start at 0 for our counter, and then we're going to say while the counter is less than the length of our array, right? So every time we make an enemy, it's going to add 1. So it's going to start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say I made 5. That would be the length. Okay? So while this is less than this, it's going to run the loop. And then every time it runs the loop, it's going to add 1. So originally e is going to be 0, and it's going to add 1. And then it's going to say, you know, is 1 less than this, then yada, 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 until it reaches the total length, or the total number of things. So what it's going to do is it's going to run this loop for basically as many times as the total number of enemies I have stored in this array, which is what I did up here. And that's why we needed it up here. Okay, so we did that. Now what I got to do is make our test if we hit it. So we're going to say if the enemy underscore r e enemy re dot hit test object bullet container, then you are going to run what's in here. So for each one of them, so originally e, so you see where it says enemy r, and then I do this little e here. What that means is that this is the index number. So the first enemy that I make will be indexed under 0. So if I want to grab that one specifically, I would do enemy r, and then I could just do, I'll show you right here, I would do enemy underscore AAR, and it would look like that. That's the first one. And then the second one would be a 1, and then the third one would be a 2, because the indexing starts at 0. Okay. Okay. Let's clean that up. There we go. So we're going to say if the first one, so enemy R is 0, right? We're going to test that if that hit test object, so if it hits this object, bullet container, then it's going to run this code. That's what this is doing right here. All right. Now the bullet container, if you remember, is the thing that I made to hold all of my bullets. Now the reason there's other ways of doing this, but this is just a little bit easier because I need this to be a constant, and since it's always going to be in there, it always is going to be able to hit something. So we're going to say if you hit that bullet container which contains the bullet, so those are underneath it, so that would include this. What it's going to do is run the next bit of code. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you what I would want it to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this work. We're just going to do enemy. Don't do this, actually. I'm just going to show you first. Enemy R. Okay. I'm sorry. We're going to do this. Oops. Remove child. So just like we do add child. And what we would remove would be the enemy underscore ARR. And then the one that got hit, which would be the one that's in that the current for loop is in. Like that. All right. Just gonna test this real quick. Hopefully, don't get any errors. And oh, we didn't. Okay. So you see, it gets rid of them. All right. So this already works. It's already, you know, getting rid of the dudes and/or dudettes. All right. So you can see it's a little bit weird. It's not acting 100% how we want. What you'll notice is I shoot one bullet and it just goes right through them. I want the bullet to go away as well. So in a weird way, I have to do is also test if the bullet hits something after this thing gets tested. Okay, so I'm going to remove this for right now. So what we're going to do is inside of this, so after if we see the enemy hit something, I'm going to go ahead and test if a bullet hits something, which obviously the bullet would be hitting. So we're going to basically do the same for loop that's up here, but for the inside of this if statement underneath the other one. So it's going to be for, and we're going to do var, and we're going to call b this time, b. Okay, and it's going to be of the type int. We're going to set it equal initially to 0. And then we're going to say while b is less than the bullet array, the length of that, okay? And then every one of them we're going to do b plus plus. So it's going to add, it's going to increment it, okay? And then inside of here, we're going to do the same if loop of the previous one, okay? So then we're going to say if the bullet, bullet underscore r, so the current one that we are testing, okay, if that dot hit test object, if that hits the current enemy that we are in, enemy underscore ARR, and then that would be E, like that, test the current enemy, double check, yeah, then that goes to that one, that goes to that one, then you're going to run this bit of code here, okay? I know this is like a lot of code. Okay, so basically we're going to first test that it hits a bullet, right? So that's what this is going to do. Say, oh, did you hit a bullet? And it's going to say, yeah, okay. And then this one, what's going to do is we're going to find out which bullet it hit. Because what I have to do is I have to both make the spaceship or the enemy disappear and the bullet disappear. I want both to disappear. So I have to find out which bullet specifically that it hit. So now, inside of that one, we can actually do what we want. So we're going to do remove child, and we can remove the enemy first. Enemy, and it's the one that we're currently testing. So, oops, got to put the E in there. Enemy array E. Yeah, okay. Now, and we will also do a remove oh, so for the other one, the bullet one, what you do is remove the child from the parent object. So in this case, if you remember, we just made the enemy. We just did add child, which means it's a child of the stage. So when you just do remove child, it will remove it from the stage. In this case, if you remember, we actually added our bullets to a bullet container. So actually, I don't just do remove child. I have to say bullet container dot remove child, because I'm removing it from that container. Remove child, and that will be the current bullet that's we're testing. So it'd be like that. Okay. Now, I think that should work. Let's just double check real quick. I just don't want to be any errors. All right, so what you're going to notice is, oh, it doesn't seem to be too angry about it. Let's see if this, all right, I thought it should be getting all mad about it, but that seems to be working. Okay, I'm going to do one other thing. This is actually just as like kind of a cleanup thing. Maybe it's working. I don't know, but so one of the things that's happening is we're removing that object, but we don't remove it from our list, our array list. Okay, so it killed the object that's on the stage, but as far as my variable, the variable bullet and the variable enemy, those are still indexed in there. So what I want to do is actually remove those from the index as well, just to make sure that there's no like weirdness. So I'm gonna do enemy array. Oops, enemy underscore array, and then we're gonna do remove at, and that's gonna be E, like that. And what that's going to do, it's going to remove the index of that of the object that we just deleted. It's going to actually remove it from the array as well. That's what we're doing. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So we're going to do bullet underscore array dot remove at, and we're going to remove this also from that. And I feel like when I did this before, I was getting an error until I did that. But it seems to be, well, now I'm getting error from it. Let's remove these. I'm just going to comment these out. And let's see if this makes it run better. If it runs without it, then I'm just going to leave it. Yeah, you know what? It doesn't seem to care. So what I would say is more power to you. Go ahead and just leave it like that. If for some reason it just gets an error, then you need to put it in there. I'm just going to leave it like that. All right. So that's good. Now that works. The next thing I need to do is I have no way for my player to die, and we don't have any score or anything like that. So I need a victory condition and a losing condition, more or less. So I'm going to save this, what we have so far, and in the next video we're going to add the ability to die and the ability to score points for killing, I guess, which those are sad things to say. Anyway.